A major new hurdle for construction of the Tappan Zee Bridge tonight and a major potential headache for Governor Andrew Cuomo. The EPA today rejecting a controversial $511 million loan maneuver engineered by the Cuomo administration that would have used EPA environmental money to pay for bridge construction. The Cuomo team had argued that the cash would go for environmentally helpful aspects of bridge construction like dredging the river and noise reduction, but the EPA nixed the deal, saying the spending would not improve water quality. Now, the rejection will make the already difficult job of paying for the bridge even more difficult. With the EPA loan, Albany was still $1.8 billion short of the nearly $4 billion it needs to pay for the bridge. But take that $500 million away, and now the project is $2.3 billion short. And there you can see the math. Almost there. It's 2.3, trust me. Governor Cuomo has thus far offered no hint at how he'll make up that difference, leading many to wonder if that will mean a huge toll hike on the Tappan Zee. Cuomo has yet to say what toll rates will be in coming years. And of course, this is all complicated further because politically this is an election year, and Republican challenger Rob Astorino has been hammering the governor pretty regularly on issues related to this bridge. Let me start with the former 5-term Rockland County executive, since the bridge goes to your county. Are you surprised that the EPA nixed this deal? Are you surprised that the governor tried this method to get the money?
Both. I'm not surprised they nixed it because the nexus between the construction of a bridge and water quality in the Hudson is really weak. And in fact, the only thing the EPA approved was $29 million, which had nothing to do with the bridge whatsoever, but had to deal with estuary relief, etc. And they cited, by the way, the Clean Water Act and many other acts as well. It's a long letter. It's a statutory interpretation. The governor says he's going to appeal this. We have to appeal to the EPA next within 30 days. But I don't see them changing. This is a statutory interpretation. I think he just lost $500,000,
now,
$500 million.
Richard, I suspect if this was, call me cynical, if this was a Republican governor we were talking about, you'd be saying, this is a guy just figuring out how to get it done. Bridge has got to be paid for. This is how I'm going to do it. I take it you have a slightly different take on it.
I don't think a Republican governor would try this nonsense by pushing forward water quality funding from the EPA. There certainly would have been a different avenue to deal with this funding gap. It wouldn't have been something as so obvious as is trying to get the EPA money. My thoughts is that, here's a guy, Governor Cuomo, who won't explain anything to you, won't debate his opponent, won't talk about where he stands on fracking. I mean, how do you actually run for an office of governor and not talk about any of the issues? I mean, that comes most of a shock to me as anything.
Dominic, how damaging will this be for the governor? I'm putting balls on tees in this segment for everybody.
No damage at all to this governor. He has mayors and governors and county executives. They use all types of creative ways to come up with funding sources. Sometimes it's one-shot revenues that are highly critical. But what I'm trying to say is this governor has a creative past, like he attempted to do here. He will simply find another way to get the job done. The bottom line is, as a Rockland resident, people don't want to pay high tolls, and they want to see a new bridge. This governor will find a way to get it done.
Well, that's the question, and Michael, I'll bring this to you. $2.3 billion that the state still has yet to account for and how they're going to finish paying for this bridge. How does this happen without the tolls being $15, $16, $17?
So this is the anniversary year of the Robert Caro book, The Power Broker. So Robert Moses built bridges and the highways, interstates, the southern state. Most of the bridges we're now talking about renovating and repairing and replacing because there was a political will to do it, and they just worked backwards off of that. Governors, mayors, county executives are supposed to build bridges and highways and roads, and they're supposed to be creative in the funding to say, we're going to build this, but it's not on our dime. Governor Christie, to your point of Republicans don't do this, is trying to get the Pulaski Skyway and large parts of the roads leading to the Holland Tunnel in New Jersey funded by the Port Authority and the feds because they're saying it's of regional significance. New York Times editorial board slammed them for that, I think inappropriately, because that's his job. He's supposed to build big things and get other people to pay for it.
New Jersey
You
Port
said
Authority.
Republican governors don't do this, so I was just citing one right by us.
Well played, sir. Well played, sir.
So where's the money going to come from?
From New Jersey to New York.
It's $13, $14 to go over the Verrazano, maybe more, maybe 15. It's ludicrous. I mean, this is, I don't know how they do it without raising the tolls, but you can't have a $14
But quickly,
toll.
Scott, how damaging would that toll be? $14, $15. How damaging would a $10 toll be for people living in Rockland County?
Well, I think it's damaging. No matter, it's going up, and it's going up significantly, and everybody's kind of run away from that fact. It's going to go up. The question is, what does it do to commerce? What does it do to people that move in and out, and residents of Rockland County? Of course, one of the things we're trying to do is to create a better mass transportation system, which the bridge is supposed to accommodate, and it doesn't. And that's where you get back to this question of, if you're trying to really improve ability to move people and goods, you got to have some kind of mass transportation on that new bridge, particularly for people who don't want to pay that high price and have to get to Westchester or Bronx or Connecticut.
Buses or mass transit. Unfortunately, I think that's what's going to wind up being. Moving on, Election Day in New York is now 48 days away, and while most statewide races are still expected to be blowouts, the most intriguing race that we're going to watch election night, at least from a numbers standpoint, may well be control of the state Senate. That race should be tight, with Democrats right now favored in just enough seats to win control of the upper chamber, and to do so without that group of breakaway Democrats known as the IDC flipping allegiance again to work out a ruling deal with Republicans, which we have the assembly that we know is going to be Democratic. It's just set up that way. The governor is going to be Democratic in all likelihood. Sorry, Richard. Right. Is there really that big a functional difference if the Senate is under Republican control or IDC control or Democratic control, Michael? And what are those differences?
The population concentration is obviously in New York City and lower turnout statewide elections. But Nassau, Suffolk County, Long Island has about 17-18% of the statewide general election vote. They have all 9 of their senators as Republicans. It was split up there for a little while. I think balance in government is a good thing. So whether it's an IDC Republican coalition or an IDC mainline Democratic coalition, with sometimes partnering with Republicans, we may see coalition politics more in line with European or Israeli politics. But I think balance in government is a check against.
I'm writing down the specific differences, and so far, Scott,
the specific differences
is there a difference?
are? It's a big state, so the priorities of suburban and ex-suburban and rural voters are not the same as New York City, where they care more about mass transit and control of rent control. It's a more expansive, whole state view of New York's regions.
Who's got a difference for me? Who can give me a difference?
Look, the difference is if there's an IDC Democratic control, there are going to be certain issues that the Democrats want put forward. It's going to be, especially with New York City, it's going to be whether New York City can control minimum wage, whether the Erstad Act is appealed, and then New York City has the ability to control affordable housing, and whether Cuomo commits to anti-fracking. You know, there are those of New York City legislators who want Cuomo to say, I'm not for fracking. There's going to be some adjustments to Common Core, but I think we can all agree on that one.
Property taxes.
There are the property taxes.
Fair enough.
And also the 10 points of the women equality, which will expand basically abortion to the 9th month, which is not a good idea.
Slow down on that.
So I'm just saying.
So
there are going to be some differences. Whether or not
Slow
they
down on that
pass,
last one.
I don't think all of them will pass under IDC because they work very well with the governor. Even if they are IDCs with the Democrats, it may not pass, but it will come up.
All right, finally, 48 days is just too long to wait for political junkies to look at election results. So let's get to an election update. This is the Democratic primary in the 98th Assembly District covering southwestern Rockland and southern Orange County. Primary day was a week ago, but this race is still too close to call and is going to absentee ballots. Aaron Weider trails Elisa Tutini by just 107 votes. So no matter what happens, someone is going to lose this primary eventually by a very, very narrow margin. And we've got a lot of political experts here who have run a lot of races, been involved in a lot of races. You were both in narrow victories. Have you ever been involved in close losses? Have you ever?
It's lousy when it's that close. If we'd done one thing differently, it's painful. When you lose by a few hundred votes, you know it wasn't a blowout. You should have done the race. Doing the race was the right thing, but you missed it for a variety of reasons. But you can't point to any one. When it's a handful of votes, you think, like, if I just stayed out another half hour, it's tough.
We all recall Bush versus Gore was a very close presidential election. You're talking about a handful of votes. You know, I forget, maybe it was a county or something, a couple thousand or less than that votes. But
right,
yeah,
but a civil court campaign in South Brooklyn doesn't go to the U.S. Supreme Court. Last time
but
I
it was a
checked.
close
We
election.
did have a surrogate court race, though. We actually put a writ into the U.S. Supreme Court for review, but it didn't go anywhere.
Scott, even if you win a narrow race, because you won, you said a 16 vote. You had a 16 vote win.
Eight vote for
8
a school
votes.
board, I believe. Yes, but I think winning is winning. the defeat is really the person who loses by the few votes. It is devastating because you say we could have gone to one more house, one more family could have switched votes and I'd be in. So it's much more difficult. But when you win by 8 votes for 4,000, it's still a win.
There's really no difference?
For winning, I don't think there's much.
No.
Except you worry about the next time because you're saying, gee, he got awful close or she got awful close. I better be prepared for the next time. I think that's about it.
Let me tell you, in my history of dealing with absentee ballots, they tend to go towards the person who has the most votes anyway.
They break the same way.
They break
Paper
the
ballots
exactly
break
right.
the
They break
exact
the
same.
So more than likely, the winner will be who's leading right now.
By the way, a win is a win. Hello, Governor Cuomo. It's nice to hear from you again.
Well, you know the old joke. What do they
Well,
call
he
the
won't
person?
show up, so I'm filling in for him.
What do they call the person that graduates last in their class of medical school?
A graduate?
Doctor.
A
Doctor.
doctor.
Right.
A doctor. All right.
But you don't want to use them.
What do they
That's
call
all.
lawyers who get C's? Judges. So there's the
All right. Up next, a look at Teddy and Franklin Roosevelt like you've never seen them before. 2 wealthy men who set out to fight for the working class and ward off big business. Question is, does America need to get back to those principles? And also, could these guys win an election in modern politics?